whole family in the Spas. Rabbi Kaplan was one of the six. Rabbi,
Not the first one.
what?
It's not the first one.
No.
I don't know.
Okay. It's one of them, you know. Okay. Rabbi Minkwitz in Montreal. There's a Rabbi Morozov here in Crown Heights, Rabbi Lipsker in Crown Heights. There's a Rabbi Altai in Winnipeg, also the sixth one. Yep. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvarim. The Rebbe came out to see us off, and the Rebbe gave instruction that the whole yeshiva, with all Rosh Yeshivas, everybody should go to the airport. For the Rebbe, this was for us, of course, because for the Rebbe, it was a big historic event. I didn't have a white beard in those days. In fact, I didn't have a beard at all, almost. We're all like 18, 19 years old. Who's the artist here? Figure out. Okay, you can keep doing that. We'll go back to Amalek over here. So, what is it that, yes, you didn't get the booklet? Yeah. So we said yesterday that every year, when that day comes around, what happens spiritually the first time happens again. And what happened spiritually the first time? That there was a nation, there was a king, which was Achashverosh, and a minister, which was Haman. No, did anyone figure it out? The one with the black hat.
Where is it?
Melbourne, Australia. What?
I know.
It's 1 out of 6. Okay, I'll show you and you'll tell me who got the right guess.
From here?
Yeah.
The right one? From here? Ooh, very hard.
You all look alike. Okay, so what we said is like this. What happened the first time was that there was a Haman that was threatening our very existence, and Hashem made a miracle, and through that miracle, he was eliminated. So spiritually, what happened was that even though it was a human being whose name was Haman, and a human being whose name was Achashverosh, and they were the ones that were attacking us. Thank you. Okay.
The right one.
This one.
Yeah.
You can tell by the glasses. Yeah.
Wow.
So there was whenever we find a story, especially in the Chumash, in Tanakh, a story of an enemy that's threatening the Jews, like Mitzrayim, or in the Chumash, the stories with Moav and Bilam and all these are all really, Klippa is the enemy of Kedusha. And these are people that, for whatever reason, there's a certain power and force of Klippa that's embodied in them. So in other words, just like we understand in general that Klippa fights Kedusha, Klippa tries to oppose Kedusha and not allow godliness to shine in this world. So that Klippa gets invested in the body of certain people or certain nations, and that's why they have this drive in them to fight Kedusha, to fight holiness, and to fight godliness. So generally speaking, there are 7 nations. And the 7 nations are also nations that embody 7 klippas. And we had this in an earlier minor, that these are the 7 attributes. One nation embodies chesed, one nation embodies gevura of klippa, one nation embodies teferes of klippa, which would also mean that even though they're all klippa, which is negative, but they're also different, just like chesed is different than gevura. And their differences would correspond to the sphere. In other words, that klippa that's from chesed, the way or whatever it is that they are fighting or whatever it is that they're doing usually is sort of chesed oriented. And those that come from gevura, it's going to be gevura oriented and teferes oriented and so on. So whenever there is a yontif, what Chassidus will discuss is which klippa was embodied in that enemy of the Jews at that time. So the Gemara says that Haman was a descendant of Amalek. And Amalek is a nation that attacked the Jewish people when they went out of Mitzrayim. And Amalek is a descendant. And this Amalek, he was the one who wanted to annihilate the Jewish people. And that Yontif, Purim, a godly light was shining in the world, which was above nature. And that light, it's just like light gets rid of darkness, that light brought about the miracle and Haman was eliminated. So what we focus on when it comes to Purim is, what is Amalek? What kind of clip is it? So I want to bring in a few things before, just like introduction to understand it better. So first of all, let's look at the source. Where's the source that Amalek is an enemy of the Yidden, or Amalek is something that has to be destroyed? So there are 3 sources which we're going to look at. One is in Chumash Bamidbar, one is in Chumash Shmois, and one is in Chumash Devarim. Let's first look at Chumash Bamidbar. This is Bilam, who was the prophet of the non-Jews, and he prophesied and he said these words, which are underlined. When he saw Amalek, which means with his prophetic vision, he saw Amalek, which was the name of a tribe, of a nation. He said, Amalek was the first of the nations, and its fate shall be everlasting destruction. Number 1. Let's turn the page. Here is another pasuk. This is in Pasha's Vayishlach, which we just recently had, and that's the story where Amalek attacked us. On top of the page, it says, Vayema Moshe el Yeshua. No, let's look at the top of the page, the first line. Vayave Amalek, Amalek came and fought with the Yidden in this place called Refidim. So Moshe told Yeshua, choose men for us, and we'll go fight with Amalek. They went up on top of a hill, and Yeshua was the general who was fighting. Moshe Rabbeinu lifted his 2 hands. When his hands were up, then Yidden were winning. If he put his hands down, then Amalek was winning. So the 2 people, which was Aaron and Hur, Moshe Rabbeinu's brother-in-law, they went up on the hill and they were holding his hands, and then eventually Amalek was defeated. After that, let's look at Pasuk Yudalet 14. Hashem said to Moshe, this is what you should always remember, Ki machai emcha ezeicha Amalek b'tachas hashamayim. I will liberate the remembrance of Amalek from the heaven. In other words, I will destroy him, eliminate him. He shouldn't exist. Tezayin, the last pasuk at the bottom, Hashem said there's a war against Amalek from generation to generation. Like this Amalek, he will be fought with all generations forever. In fact, it says in English, for there is a hand on the throne. Rashi says it means Hashem lifted his hand, made an oath that no matter what, he's getting rid of Amalek. Then we have the same thing on page 9, pasuk in Devarim, where it gives us the mitzvah once again, Zachar Shasluch Amalek. Remember what Amalek did when you went out of Mitzrayim. What did he do? Asher karcha b'derech, he cut you off on the way as you were going off from out of Mitzrayim, and he tried to attack you. So therefore, you have to remember Timcha Ezecher Amalek. You have to erase the remembrance of Amalek, as the pasuk concludes. So now, from here we know this is one of the mitzvahs. Turn to page 10. You see it's one of the mitzvahs in the Rambam when he counts mitzvahs. There's two mitzvahs. One is to erase, and one is to remember. It sounds a little bit contradictory, but let's look at 188 first. By this injunction, we're commanded that among the descendants of Esav, we're to exterminate the seed of Amalek, male and female, young and old. This injunction is contained in the words, you shall blot out the remembrance of Amalek. In fact, it says in Sifri that there are 3 commandments that the Yidden had when they go into Eretz Yisrael. One is to appoint a king, one is to build a Beis Hamikdash, and the third one is to annihilate all the offspring of Amalek. And look at the second page, where it says to remember. By this injunction, we're commanded to remember what Amalek did to us when he attacked us unprovoked. We came out of Mitzrayim, weren't bothering anybody, and Amalek attacked us. So there's another mitzvah to remember. Never forget what Amalek did to us. And that's why every single day, if you turn to the next page, you'll probably know that there's 6 things which you're supposed to remember every day. Remember Shabbos, remember the 10 Commandments, remember that you didn't worship the golden calf. One of them is Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you, and every day when you say it, you're makayim that mitzvah of remembering what Amalek did. So the big question is, what did Amalek do? He attacked us unprovoked. No. Is that the worst thing in the world that ever happened? You didn't wear Mitzrayim for 210 years. They tortured them. They beat them. They whipped them. They made them work so hard. They killed their babies. There's no commandment. Remember forever what Mitzrayim did to you and erase all the offsprings of Mitzrayim. So what happened? What did Amalek do that was so outrageous that warrants a punishment that no other nation has such a punishment? In fact, the words that you saw before from the prophecy that Amalek was the first to attack, but he will be destroyed forever, means that when Mashiach comes, all the nations will turn around and serve Hashem, and there'll be one nation that'll be destroyed completely, and that's Amalek. So what is it? How can you explain such a thing? What did he do that is so severe that he warrants such a punishment? And B'chlal, people don't understand. How could there be a mitzvah to destroy men, women, and children? How could there be such a commandment? It doesn't apply today. We don't even know how Amalek is today, even though they must be around somewhere, descendants of Amalek. But because we don't know who they are, you're not allowed to do anything like it, because we don't know who Amalek is. But the mitzvah is still a mitzvah. How does it make sense? So obviously, it's coming from Hashem, who is compassionate. And when Hashem is compassionate, so therefore the Torah, as we see all the laws, compassion for humans, compassion for animals, tzar balachayim. So it has to be that this is based on the fact that this is a nation that is a threat to the rest of the world. And it's like somebody would imagine, just try to imagine if someone like Hitler would have been in a situation where you have to judge whether he should be punished or not, allow him to live or not. And let's say a judge would rule he did something so horrible that he should be killed, and everybody would say, no, Rahman has compassion. So unfortunately, that kind of compassion led to millions and millions of people being killed. Only the Eibishter knows that. So therefore, and the Eibishter says that these people have to be eliminated, means that they are a threat to the rest of the world. What's the threat? What is Amalek? And why isn't it one of the 7 nations? If it's such a terrible thing, why isn't it one of the 7 nations? So you might remember that we did learn a little bit about this in the beginning of the year. We had a mimer called Lech Lecha, and that mimer talked a little bit about Amalek, and we'll go into it in more details over here. So in that mimer, by the way, we spoke about the pasuk which we just read here on page 7, which says the first one to attack you is Amalek. What does it mean, the first one? Chronologically, they were the first. But Chassidus explains not just chronologically, but spiritually. This is a klippa that leads to all other klippas. And in fact, that's the reason why it has to be dealt with so severely. So let's explain that a little bit. So where do we start? Let's start with these words. On page 9, let's look at page 9. It says, and we say this every day after davening, Asher korcha baderech, which means he met you on the way as you were leaving Egypt, and he attacked you, and when you were faint and you were weary, and he didn't fear God. So the Gemara says, Rashi says this in Chumash, what does the word korcha mean? And Rashi says the word korcha could be understood from the word kar, which means cold, krirut, and explains it with a mushal. And the mushal is that there was a hot bath, the water was boiling hot to the point that it was bubbling, and everybody's standing around, and they're saying that this water is so hot, it's untouchable. There was one wild man that said, nah, it's not untouchable. You want to see? And he jumped in the water. He jumped in the water. The moment he jumped in the water, his whole body was covered with boils from head to toe from the hot water. It burnt him. So the Gemara says, even though he got burned, but he cooled off the water in the eyes of the people. In other words, not that the temperature changed in the water, but psychologically, in the minds of the people, up until that point, this water was untouchable. It's so hot, you can't even go near it. Even though he jumped in and got burned, but still the fact that he jumped in broke, you can use, it's funny to use the term broke the ice, but it means it broke that spell. You could. And the same is with the Yidden. Yidden were in Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim at that time was the superpower of the world. They had the strongest army. They were the strongest in wisdom, the wisdom of Egypt. They were the strongest in sorcery. And the whole world knew that they're the ones who control the world. The Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, and the Eibishter made such miracles that they were wiped out, they were humiliated. Hashem washed the floors with them, literally. One plague after another plague after another plague, and the sea split. It says in the Chumash that the whole world, all the nations of the world, were frozen with fear when they heard about the Yidden. If they can do that to Mitzrayim, then these are very powerful people, to the extent that 40 years later, when the Yidden came to go into Eretz Yisrael, they were then still melting with fear because what they remembered from before. And look what happens. Yidden go out of Mitzrayim. It's only a few days later, not 40 years later, a few days later, Amalek attacks. And what do they accomplish with their attacking? Exactly the same thing. The whole world felt that they're untouchable and Hashem protects them and there's no way you can even think of attacking them. And Amalek said, no, it's not true. I attacked them. Now he got killed, he was eliminated, he was defeated, but still he managed to cool off that enthusiasm, that fear that everybody had, that awe that everybody had for Hashem. Look, these are Hashem's people and they're untouchable. And they said, no, they are not untouchable. So that's one thing about Amalek. I will soon explain what that means on a personal level. There's another thing about Amalek. So by the way, as we speak, what I'd like you to do is just check off on the list. So we know that we went into this. So this is number 26 on the list. Asher karcha baderech. He made you cold. Then there's another thing, number 25, that Amalek is the gematria suffix. The gematria, the numerical value of the word Amalek is 240, and the numerical value of the word suffix is also 240. A suffix means doubt, which means that Amalek is the kind of a klipa that puts doubt in the person's mind. Doubt. So basically, these two things are really connected. And let's explain what it means in Avodas Hashem. In a simple way, in Avodas Hashem, it means that when a person davens and learns and does mitzvahs, there's two kinds of Yetzaharas. There's one kind of Yetzirah that tells him not to follow and do what you're supposed to. So let's say the 7 nations, which is Knani, Chiti, Ameri, Prizi, Yevusi, and Gergashi. These 7 nations are always mentioned in the Chumash, not only because they were the ones who occupied the land of Canaan, but in a certain sense, they are the ones who include all the 70 nations. We know that in general there are 70 nations. The origin is 7 nations. These 7 nations mentioned in Chumash. So again, if you would just turn the pages, look it up and see where it's found in the Chumash. We also say this in davening a lot. Page 23. This is Hashem first, whereas Hashem spoke to Abram and told him you'll be occupying the land, inheriting the land of the 7 nations. It says, Nachiti, Aprizi, Arfaim, Ameri, Haknani, Agirgosha, you will see 7 nations. Actually, here there are 10 nations, because there are 3 which will conquer when Mashiach comes. But the 7 nations are really 7 nations that include all the other nations. And even though there are 70, so again, the 70 are included in the 7. And I told you today, there are United Nations, 120 nations or more. So they're all included in the 70. They're branches of some of the 70. So let's say if we talk about one of the nations is the klip of chesed. What does that mean? That it's the Yetzirah of love. Love something or someone which goes against Torah. And that love could cause me to not follow what Hashem says. That's one kind of Yetzirah. Or Gevura. Gevura is, let's say, when the Yetzirah makes a person angry or hate, or Chas v'Shalom, a person is driven to murder. This is Gevura of Klippa. These are things which are violating Torah. Amalek is a different kind of a Klippa. It's not generating this energy or drive to violate the Torah, but what Amalek is doing is cooling us off, which means you're learning Torah, you're doing mitzvahs, but Amalek has something against that excitement, that heat, the enthusiasm, and finds ways and reasons to cool down a year's enthusiasm about Hashem. And one of the examples are given, if we have an opportunity, I'll try to learn this inside in a mimer, but let me first explain it, and maybe we'll learn it inside. Like one of the examples are given is, for example, if there's a miracle. When a person sees a miracle in their life, they get very excited. They're on a high. Wow, Hashem just did this miracle, and this is amazing and incredible. I saw Hashem's hands, and so on and so forth. Amalek comes along and says, what are you getting so excited about? And gives the following mashal. Imagine you're standing by Kriyas Yam Suf. and the sea splits right in front of your face. And Moshe says, okay, now you can go across. That is a miracle that there are no words. We say it's always mentioned in davening, the great miracle of splitting of the sea. So Amalek stands next to you. And by the way, he could be wearing a hat and a beard and say, what are you getting so excited about? Who made this miracle? And you say, Hashem. So Hashem created heaven and earth. He created all the stars. He created all the constellations. He created the Milky Way. He created millions and millions of stars that are who knows how many thousands or millions of light years away. He created everything on earth, which is so brilliant. And you're getting excited that he made the water stand straight. Big deal. For Hashem, it's not a big thing. Does it make sense? Logically?
No.
Does it make sense?
Logically?
What's the big deal? For Hashem, it's nothing. He created heaven and earth and created the human being and he created the whole world and all the trees and all the animals and all the humans and all the stars and the constellations and the whole creation. So you're getting excited that he made that water instead of going like this, it goes like that. But this is Amalek. It's a thought that the intention is to cool me off, to take away that excitement. I got excited about the miracle. Here it comes along with some sort of way of looking at it in a cold, logical way. Nothing to get excited about. How do I know? Maybe it's Taka just being intellectual and acting in an intelligent way. So the answer is, we see Begashmias, the brain doesn't work that way. Imagine you go to a circus and you see people doing crazy things. They're doing, what do they call it? Acrobats in the air, they're flying from here to there. A guy walks in and picks up an elephant on both hands, picks up an elephant that weighs a ton. Everybody's going, why are they so excited? Obviously for him, it's not a big deal. This guy who is doing acrobats, amazing acrobats, for them it's nothing. They're doing it for the last 20 years. So why is everybody getting so excited?
There's no Amalek there.
It's not the Ruchnius, it's Gashmius.
So that's why.
Oh, no, right. So I want to say, no, but I'm asking a different question. If it makes sense to say that for that person it's nothing, what are you getting excited for? Why don't we think that way? Because the human nature doesn't think that way. The human nature is to think, if it's something that for me is impossible and I see someone do it, it's very exciting. To me, this seems to be inconceivable, impossible. And I'm watching this person do this amazing stunt, flying from an airplane and doing all sorts of somersaults and all sorts of tricks. To me, it's something impossible, so I am excited. So how come when it comes to Hashem, suddenly my brain is thinking differently? So the answer is, it's Amalek. It's not because I'm being intellectual and logical, it's because I'm Amalek, because it goes against the nature of a person. And by the way, Amalek has a whole storage of excuses and reasons to make me not excited about things of Kedusha. So sometimes you hear a conversation where one person is like all emotional, wow, about this and that, and someone else says, it's this explanation, that explanation, whether it's a miracle or something else, not to get excited about it. Any thought, this is the interesting point, any thought, if the thing that it accomplishes, it cools down some sort of excitement and passion and fire about something godly, that comes from Amalek.
Can I say something about the things that the Rebbe did?
Yeah.
In one way, it's exciting to hear stories, but in the other way, it's clear, So this is Amalek?
When you say clear, I mean, what's the point of the story? Of course the Rebbe could do what he does.
Yeah.
That's Amalek.
What? Amalek?
Yeah.
It's Amalek?
Yeah.
But I saw that the Hasidim said that we don't need to excite about it, right?
This is something that was said by Hasidim in the previous generation. And the reason why they didn't get excited about this, because they got excited about deeper things. But we don't get excited about it, that's usually from Amalek. in general, this is one of the differences between Chabad and other Hasidic groups. And in Chabad, the focus was not the miracles. The focus was learning Chassidus and getting excited about learning and understanding Chassidus. In other Hasidic groups, the main excitement was because they didn't learn so much in depth, so their excitement about godliness came about mainly through the miracles. So maybe that's what you heard, that there was a time when Hasidim didn't get excited about the miracles, not Chas v'Shalom because there's nothing exciting, because the miracles compared to the understanding of Hashem is external, and therefore we should get excited about the deepest part. There's a famous story that happened by the Tzemach Tzedek, which is an example. And the story was with a woman who, her husband disappeared, and she was an aguna. I don't know why, but somehow in the times of the Tzemach Tzedek, there was a lot of such cases. And Tzemach Tzedek was very involved in helping women find where their husbands were. Sometimes it would look like advice, sometimes it was just open Ruach HaKodesh. So this woman who had that problem, she was already a few years that he was gone. She had no married life. She couldn't remarry because she doesn't know if her husband is alive or not. It's called an aguna. So people advised her to go to the Tzemach Tzedek. When she came, she found out that at this time the Tzemach Tzedek wasn't having any appointments with Chlal, or wasn't having appointments with women at that time, and she couldn't see him. So they advised her that she should go to the Rebbitzin, try to find some work in the kitchen and get close to the Rebbitzin, and through that, eventually she'll get a chance to ask the Rebbe her request. And she did that, and she actually got a job. She was helping in the kitchen. She had another tragic situation. She had a son who was like 9 years old, and he was born with not being able to speak. He couldn't speak. So people advised her that being that she can't speak to the Tzemach Tzedek, she should write down on a note for her son, a piece of paper, that as if he's asking, and he's saying to the Rebbe, Rebbe, my father has been gone for so many years. Please tell me where we can find him. And he should hide in the shul before the Rebbe comes in. And then when the Rebbe comes in, to jump out of his hiding place and give the Rebbe the note before anyone stops him. And then hopefully he'll get an answer. So the table had a very big tablecloth, was hanging over. So he hid under the table, behind the tablecloth, and waited for the Rebbe to come in. When the Rebbe walked in, he jumped out of the table, and he gives the Rebbe the note, and the Rebbe's secretary started screaming at him, hey, who let you do that? Too late. The Rebbe already got the note. The Rebbe looked at the note and said to him, tell your mother, your father is in this city. Just like that, he told him which city to go. He goes back to his mother, and he says, the Rebbe said that my father is in this city. She never heard him speak in his life. He grew up mute. She heard him speak, and she fainted from shock. And she woke up, and then she found out that the Rebbe gave actually a very clear address. So she went there, and she found her husband, and she got a get. The Chassidim were talking about this story. They called it the double miracle. Wow. The Rebbe spoke. One of the sons, the Tzemach Tzedek asked him, what is everybody talking about? So he told him the story. He said, listen, it's not my fault. I didn't know that he doesn't know how to speak. No one told me that he's mute. So the Rebbitzin of the Tzemach Tzedek said, look what the Chassidim are getting excited about it. In my father's day, she was a daughter of the Mittel Rebbe and a granddaughter of the Alter Rebbe. So the Chassidim were excited about Yichud Ilah, Yichud Tata, the deep concepts of Chassidus. There were miracles all over the place. They didn't even bend down to pick it up. So again, they were so involved in something higher and deeper, and that's why. But in our generation, we were not that involved in higher and deeper. And in fact, in the class of Mashiach Geula, we learned about a sikha that the Rebbe gave, Tavshalom Beis, Vayeshev, and the Rebbe said that now is the time that we have to dafka speak about miracles and publicize miracles, and that's going to bring Mashiach closer. So today is a different time than it used to be. And therefore, if a person tells someone a miracle, or a person says something like, let's say, he asks a question in the Chumash, and says the Rebbe gave this answer, and you listen to the answer and you go, wow, this is amazing, this is brilliant, like, wow, I can't believe it. The other person says, so when you get excited, the Rebbe is a genius. What's so exciting? It's true, but the thought that comes in your mind that says, don't get excited, if that's what it's saying, it's Amalek. Any thought that cools down the temperature when it comes to Yiddishkeit or godliness or anything like that, it's coming from Amalek. It's sometimes someone comes and is excited about something that they learned, and another person says, yeah, I heard it already a long time ago. It's cooling down. I remember there's a sikha from the Rebbe, where the Rebbe said someone came into my office and he told me something about what the Frierdiker Rebbe said, and he misunderstood what the Frierdiker Rebbe said. He didn't understand it correctly. And he was very excited about it. And the Rebbe said, I didn't want to correct him because I didn't want to bring down his excitement. Because naturally he was excited about something godly. So I didn't want to correct him. Even it wasn't the mistake, Chas v'sholom, and doing something wrong. It was the way he understood something. There was much deeper meaning to what he heard. But being that he was excited, I didn't want to cool down his excitement. So therefore, any thought, anything you hear from anyone that it makes the person cool down, that's Amalek. And that's why physically, how did it manifest? That Amalek was the one who cooled down. And the reason why this clip is worse than all other clippers is very simple. All the other clippers have a big sign that say, I am a clipper, stay away from me. That's easier to fight because it's an open clipper. What I mean to say is when a person has a passion to steal, to kill, to hurt, okay, that's clipper. This doesn't look like klipa. It's like physically, there's certain things in the body. If chas v'sholom, the hand of a person turns red, green, and yellow, you run to the hospital, you run to the emergency room, you got to do something about it. There's certain things in the body you don't feel, you don't see. It's there. You only can detect it if you do an MRI or you take a blood test, and then they find something chas v'sholom. These things that are very quiet and not visible are the most dangerous, because they grow, and then by the time they do become visible, it's beyond repair. Baruchni is the same thing. Amalek is a kind of a klipa that could destroy completely because it doesn't look like it's klipa. It looks like it's coming from Kedusha. There's a reason, there's a logic, it makes sense not to get excited. And that's basically why Amalek is a klipa that has to be completely eliminated. And this is connected to the other thing, that Amalek is b'gematria doubt. And the doubt is also part of calling the person off. Sometimes you're excited about something, and then a thought comes to you and says, are you sure? That's a one word. No, I didn't say anything. I just asking me. You feel sure about it? That's all. And that's enough to like take the air out of the balloon, the excitement. So there's what doubt means, generally speaking, means doubt in Amunah, doubting Hashem, doubting Torah, doubting what Moshe Rabbeinu said. These doubts also is what comes from Amalek. And in a sense, it's also the same thing, that it's like, doesn't look so much klipa, because I'm not saying I don't believe. I just want to understand better. It sounds like I want to be intellectual. I want to be a logical person. So I'm just questioning, and that's all. But the truth is, it's Amalek is there to put in doubt in my mind. And when you put in doubt in your mind, he knows that eventually from the doubt, you're weakening the whole thing. And eventually the person will chas v'sholom lose it completely. So what is it and how do we deal with it? What's the way to eliminate it? So this we will learn in Mitzvah Shem next week. But these are the two things with the staples of Amalek, doubt and coldness. So today we have an Amalek weather out there, but this is something which explains the third part, why this is the beginning of all the other klippos, which we'll go into in Mitzvah next time. Okay, good Shabbos, everybody. see you, Mitzvah Hashem, hopefully tomorrow night at the banquet. And I just want to say, by the way, about what's going on.